Today's episode of the GoldCast is sponsored by the second part, Raymond, of our 49ers gold dive into the 2019 season. This is a 2019 season celebration is what this is. Even though it did not end the way we wanted, we still wanted to celebrate what an incredible turnaround after patiently waiting for 2 years for Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, and Jimmy G to make good on the promise that they could turn this team around. We finally got our season in the most shocking of fashions. And even though it didn't end the way we wanted it to, Raymond and I still felt that this season was worth celebrating, and we would not let it go into the night without one last look at what was, in general, overall, a phenomenal season. Raymond, before we get started, why don't you let them know where can they find us to talk about part 2 of our 2019 Gold Dive?
You can always like us on Facebook.com/TheGoldCast, and you can follow us on Twitter at @the_Goldcast, and be sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and Stitcher, all under the same moniker of The Goldcast. Like, subscribe, and comment because we certainly like to hear from you, and we always and most definitely want to get your take on your favorite parts of this past season, all the way up until the point of the season which we will not talk about.
That's a great point. We will not be going over the Super Bowl. We just don't see a point. This is all about the season up to that. So that's what this is about. Raymond, now if they want to talk to you directly about these games, where can they find you?
You can always find me on Twitter at Ray Solis, that's RaySolis, and on Instagram at RaySolis1. That's the number 1, not the spelling.
Yeah, and you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at I am Rudy 3rd. I am Rudy 3RD. All right, here we go, gang. This is it, the second part. This part of our Gold Dive will cover weeks 9 through 17, the second half of the season. We'll be covering the playoffs in our third and final episode. And, of course, giving our Gold Dive awards, which we always do when we do a Gold Dive. We'll be doing it for the entire season. But here it is, the second part. Get ready, because the greatest finalist in the game, he's in the building. Your professor of finalism, I'm right here. Class is in session. Let's go.
San Francisco, are you ready? This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the First, baby.
Boom! All right, Ray. Here we go. We're moving into the second half of our Gold Dive. For those of you who are newer to the GoldCast, Gold Dives are episodes where we do deep dives into games, moments, players, anything, any moment of history that is worthy of note for our teams, the 49ers, the Warriors, and the Giants. This one is going to be the second half of our Gold Dive into the 2019 season that just passed. If you want to hear the previous one, just go 2 episodes back just before our all-decade team two-parter, and you can hear the first half of this episode on that feed. So check that out. It's on the same feed right here on the GoldCast. Just scroll down 2 episodes back, and you can see the 49ers regular season 2019 season celebration part 1 on here on this feed. Now, Raymond, let's begin. We're going to be kind of switching it up, doing a little bit deeper dives because the second half of the season is pretty exciting. So we're going to be going a little bit more in-depth on the bigger games. But let's start, Raymond, with Week 9. Week 9, we were at Arizona. The Vegas odds had Niners at minus 10.5, so obviously they were pretty confident in our ability to win. This game happened on Halloween. And for those of you who didn't know, I was at a major SAG-AFTRA event, Ray, and I was dressed as Elliot from E.T. I had the red hoodie.
What's SAG-AFTRA for those who don't know?
For those who don't know, that is the Actors Guild that every actor you admire, and that's in every movie you love, That's the union that we're all in. So thank you for asking, Ray. So that's that. There's a big SAG event that I was part of the committee group that was throwing it. I was dressed as Elliot from E.T. We were supposed to be wearing Halloween outfits, and so that's what I was. That's what I was for Halloween, and this was the Halloween game, quote unquote. All right, so this game was hyped AF, and Raymond, I have a name for this game. I call this game Thriller Night on a San Francisco boat party in Arizona. You like that? So why don't you break down this game for the people, Ray?
Well, I thought the interesting thing was that the Arizona Cardinals acquired Kenyon Drake in a trade from the Miami Dolphins because they had running back issues coming into this contest. And I thought, like, oh, man, he's got, like, a week. I think it was like a week turnaround or something like that, even less than that to come around. I thought, like, man, this should be pretty good. And you even, I don't know if you remember this, or maybe you do, in fantasy, you decided to play him, which I thought was really risky against.
And I picked him up. I picked him up the second he got traded.
Yeah, against a top flight defense. I just thought top flight defense, they are at home, but at the same time, but he has to travel to there and get acquainted with the playbook and then play that day. And we didn't even know what the snap count was going to be. But anyways, Kenyon Drake actually had a really good game against the San Francisco 49ers, and he actually opened up the game with he had a monster run early in the game, and then ended up getting a 30-yard touchdown in the opening series, I believe it was. But Jimmy Garoppolo answered right back, and instead of running the ball, which the Arizona Cardinals were anticipating, because this game was right after the Carolina Panthers 51-13 whomping. And a lot of that was the running game just steamrolling. So they were anticipating that. But instead, Kyle Shanahan came out with the exact opposite game plan, which was to throw the ball. So the first series, Jimmy went 5 for 5 and scored a touchdown on that opening drive. And although and then in this game, we also had another touchdown called back by a flag, which was the 6th touchdown called back by a flag committed by the 49ers offense.
So many this season, so many.
Up to that season, yeah. This is week 9, so this is only 8 games in. So, through 8 games, 6 touchdowns called back.
Almost a touchdown a game.
3 of them were from George Kittle. George Kittle easily could have had 8 or 10 touchdowns this season,
and a way bigger fantasy presence in the first half of the season. Since you mentioned fantasy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he still did good in fantasy. He still was like between him and Mark Andrews and Travis Kelce, you were in good company in terms of fantasy tight ends. There's only like 3 or 4 that were really worth keeping on your roster game in and game out. But that's another podcast that doesn't exist called the GoldCast Fantasy.
Almost sounds like an adult film.
Yeah. I think this game was really back and forth where, the first quarter was neck and neck. It was 7-7. But by the second quarter, San Francisco really pulled away, getting 21-7. And then in the second half, Arizona came back to bring it into one possession. And then Niners scored another touchdown to make it 28-14, which was a 21-yard pass from Jimmy Garoppolo to Dante Pettis. And at that point, the Niners would not score again. This is 6 minutes left in the third quarter. And the Niners would never score at all. And Arizona would come in with a field goal and a touchdown and get a third possession to try to win the game. But it didn't work out. I mean, and the bomb to Dante Pettis, by the way, that was the infamous touchdown throw where Dante Pettis did the Thriller celebration dance, the very appropriately timed Thriller celebration dance. It was pretty awesome.
That was the best. That's why I named this. That's part of what inspired the name for this game, the title.
Yeah, and by the way, all these games are available on the NFL what's it called?
The NFL Game Pass.
Yeah, the Game Pass, which is awesome. They have 3 different versions of the game. There's the original broadcast, so the 4 quarters. Then there's the condensed version, which kind of just highlights all of the best plays throughout all 4 quarters. And then there's the radio version if you just want to hear Greg Papa. Pretty awesome. And in fact, because you can play, I would if you really want to go that route and look at the whole game, I would open up 2 tabs so that you can hear Greg Papa and then mute the original the video broadcast. Mute the video broadcast and then synchronize it with Greg Papa. And that's probably the best way to do it.
Whoa.
Because you can do that. You can open up 2 tabs. You don't have to deal with the fact that the TV broadcast will always be purposefully desynced from the radio broadcast, so people don't do that.
That's pretty good. Wow, Raymond. Now I have to go back and do it the like in and out secret menu style.
Yeah, exactly. And so you gotta love the internet having that kind of flexibility. But yeah, this game was a great game because Jimmy really came out slinging. That seemed to be the game plan all along, and it worked. It worked beautifully. Jimmy G threw for over 300 yards, compared to Arizona's 204 by Kyler Murray. And the Niners were just prepared. I mean, Arizona did run the ball really well. It was only 23 carries for 153 yards. That's a good day of rushing. I mean, we got 101 yards off of 31 carries, so it wasn't a horrible effort on our side of the football. But at the same time, Jimmy, I thought, was really good. He didn't have any picks. He had 4 touchdowns. He was 4-0, over 300 yards. So this is a total Jimmy Garoppolo game. And we kept the win streak going. We improved to 8-0.
For sure. All right, let's move over to Week 10. Now, Raymond, this was the game they were saying, again, was going to be the true test of the 49ers. This is something we just heard over and over and over again. The other popular phrase we heard was the moving goalposts of which game was the actual real test for the 49ers. We never really knew. And so, whatever, every time we thumped one of these great teams, the second a new great team would show up, they go, no, this is the real test. That team is actually not that great. And this was without a doubt a goalpost that we knew wasn't going to move. Seattle was coming in pretty hot. They were 8-2. And they were
7-2 at the time.
Oh yeah, 7-2 at the time. Yeah, 7-2 at the time, and we were 8-0, and so this was a true test of with the 49ers. I remember this game being pretty hyped. We were hyped as a fan base. The overall confidence was very high that we could beat Seattle this year, and this to me was the opening of the gauntlet. Even though the gauntlet is the 3 games that everyone considers to be the gauntlet, to me, the actual gauntlet, the first round of the gauntlet begins with Seattle and it ends with Seattle, and the main event is actually in the middle. But noticeably absent, Raymond, during this game was Shanahan's Scarlet Niners cap. I think that's really important. He was rocking the Army Green one because it was like the Tribute to the Troops month. And so here he was rocking that cap instead of the red Scarlet Niners cap, the most popular 49ers cap in the last 10 years. And I think that this was, I think this is part of it. It's part of why we lost. I have no proof of this. There's actually no statistical evidence to prove that wearing an Army camo hat will affect a Niners game, but it did this season, Raymond. It absolutely did. So the overall analysis of this game was mixed. Vegas had us at, like I said, 6.5-point favorites, so they were pretty confident we could beat them. I have a name for this game, Raymond, and the name for this game is Ric Flair's Underpants.
Ouch.
Yeah, because this ended in a pile of shit.
Ended in a pile of shit.
Here we go.
That's one way to describe it.
That's absolutely. So let's talk about this. Both defenses came out with something to prove. The Niners managed to get 3 on the board. Jimmy is sacked and has an interception called back. But at this point, we have our rookie kicker in because Robbie Gould is out, and this is important. It's Chase McLaughlin. He hits a 43-yard field goal and puts us up on the board. Wilson gets sacked on his first drive. Seattle has to punt. Sanders, Coleman, and with a little help from Depot, they keep the next drive alive. Coleman is just gashing Seattle up the middle with Sanders and Depot killing them on the inside slants. Kendrick Bourne finishes the drive off with a pass from Jimmy G for a touchdown. Niners jump to an early lead, 10-0. Seattle's forced to punt again. Okay, second quarter. Second quarter is pretty much known by one major play. Jadeveon Clowney has a strip sack, 10-yard fumble return for a touchdown that breathes a whole new life into the Seattle Seahawks. This was the moment that really changed for them. Then at the end of the second quarter, DK Metcalf almost gives the Seattle the lead with a huge run into the end zone, but Jaquiski Tartt strips him of the ball at the 1-yard line. The most clutch play, and that would not be the last time that we steal Seattle's hopes and dreams at the 1-yard line this season. But this was the first. DK Metcalf getting so close. Do you remember that play, Raymond? He's right there, and then Tartt just comes in and strips him literally right at the goal line.
Yeah, that was amazing.
That was an incredible play. Third quarter. Seattle fumbles the ball right on their opening drive. Both teams are applying a lot of pressure to each quarterback. I mean, it's like it's hit after hit. It's rush after rush. It's sack after sack.
It was like each offensive line allowed like 4 sacks in this game.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, Raymond. How impressed were you by these two defenses in rewatching it again? This game, 27-24, pretty average scoring game for an NFL game, but this game was pure defense. Both games I would categorize as being really physically brutal games. I mean, definitely shades of the old Harbaugh Carroll days. What do you think about what do you have to say about the defenses in both these on this game in particular?
Well, I'm never impressed with anything Seattle does, so that's one thing.
Absolutely. That's the right
I thought
answer.
our defense played great, despite the fact that we were already starting to miss some pieces due to, just injuries on the defensive side. We lost, at this point, Akella Witherspoon is still not, he's still absent, who was playing well up to the point before he got injured. And we also were missing Quan Alexander, who was a very complimentary and terrific piece to have inside, adjacent to Fred Warner over there. Fred Warner, let me just sidebar right here. When I watched all these games, one of the players that really stood out to me the most was Fred Warner.
Right?
He had a Pro Bowl season. He straight up played out of his mind in every game. He was all over the place. And this game was no different. He had 10 combined tackles, 9 solo tackles, 2 TFLs, 2 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. He was all over the place.
He really does. Fred Warner really sticks out. Jimmy Ward really sticks out.
Jimmy Ward's awesome.
When a DJ Jones is in there, he makes his impact known every time he's on the field. Those 3 guys are 3 guys I really noticed a lot through the season.
And DJ Jones is coming back, so is Ward, and so is, of course, Fred Warner.
And people are sleeping. People are sleeping.
Yeah, obviously we won't be able to. Buckner's going to be the one piece that we're going to have to figure out, how that gets fixed, who comes in, who steps up. I wish Solomon Thomas would become the player that we drafted him to be, but I'm not sure at this point. But who knows? Eric Armstead was a late bloomer. There's still hope for Solomon Thomas. But yeah, defensively, this was good. I thought this was Jadeveon Clowney's both games that he played for this team. This game in particular, though, was his best game of the whole season. He was largely a disappointment for this team.
That's why they let him go.
I thought when they got Jadeveon Clowney that was a huge boost to their defense, but he just really didn't do anything. He didn't do anything much of the season. They got a couple of veterans. I thought Clay Matthews played well up until when he broke his jaw and couldn't play because he's just not as durable as he used to be. But I think that this was by far Jadeveon Clowney's best game. And when he's at his best, he's just a menace just because his size and his speed is just insane. It's 6'5", 255. He's linebacker, and he's lean. He is all speed and power. So he's a terrific player. And he went to back-to-back Pro Bowls before going over to or 3 straight Pro Bowls before moving over to Seattle last season. But he just didn't do anything outside of this game. He only had 3 sacks all season, and I think 2 of those sacks were in these Niner games.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Not this. Yeah, he was insane. I mean, his Pro Bowl year, he had like 6, 9, and 9 sacks in those seasons, and he had 16, 21, 16 in terms of TFL, and it was just he was just a kind of a shell of himself. I think because that defense doesn't generate a whole lot of pass rush to begin with. So, coming from a team where you're opposing complementary pieces, J.J. Watt, I think that was part of it. You can see that, Jadeveon Clowney's success, some of that is attributed to teams having to account for J.J. Watt. And in this system, you really didn't. There was no piece as potent as a J.J. Watt on this line. In fact, Jadeveon Clowney was expected to be the J.J. Watt, and this was really the only game where he showed that kind of potential. But other than that, he was kind of nicked up the whole season and just didn't seem to really find his groove in this team and with this system. But unfortunately, he was a menace in this game. Super annoying.
Super annoying. I agree. So back here, we're in the middle of the third quarter. Niners have the lead 10-7, but Seattle nabs another interception, and this sets up their second TD, which is a 3-yard pass, Russell to Hollister, and now they have the lead 14-10. Jimmy G is sacked again by Jadeveon Clowney. This leads to another Seattle touchdown. Chris Carson on a 1-yard run, 21-10 in favor of Seattle. Now it's starting to look bleak, and now we head into the fourth quarter. So Niners in general looking pretty rough. Scoreless in the third quarter, scoreless in the second quarter. Haven't scored at all since the first quarter of this entire game. 2 quarters, straight shutout. Meanwhile, Seattle, 7 in the second, 14 in third, and here they come roaring back in the fourth. The Niners, though, would not be denied. Our fortunes change on the very first drive when Seattle is sitting here. Niners with a huge strip sack. DeForest Buckner nabs the ball and goes in for a touchdown. Basically doing what Jadeveon Clowney did to us, we do right back to them, this time with Buckner. We get the 2-point conversion. Now the game is much closer. It is now 21-18, still in favor of Seattle. Next drive here. I lost my little place.
It was Chase. That was the Chase McLaughlin live drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the next drive. Yeah, the next drive almost with the Niners almost ends an interception. Trey Flowers gets his hands on it, but is unable to keep it. We tie the game 21-21. Seattle takes the lead back with a field goal of their own, 24-21. Now the Niners have 1 minute and 45 seconds to either win the game or tie. 2 different passes here, Raymond, could have been interceptions. There were 2 different Jimmy G passes that gave me heart attacks. So close to ending this game right then and there. But a quick pass to Coleman keeps the Niners live. 40 seconds left. Niners are now out of timeout. So they get down to the 35, and the rookie, Chase McLaughlin, ties the game with 1 second left on the clock. This game goes into overtime, baby. Wilson is taken down on his opening drive by Armstead, but he manages to scramble free somehow for positive yardage. You remember that? That drove me nuts. He was right there, and it literally looked like he was tackled, and then somehow he stayed on his feet, and he gets forward just a little bit. Russell Wilson manages to escape more pressure and takes the Hawks down to the 15th-yard line. But Dre Greenlaw comes up with a super clutch INT and is finally tackled at the 50. And I thought we had this game in the bag, Raymond. I thought we had it. The Niners get in field goal position, but the rookie, Chase McLaughlin, ends up kicking what has to be one of the worst overtime kicks in Niners history. It wasn't even close, Ray. Do you remember this? It just spirals to the left. I don't know where it was
he
going.
Had 3 field goals in a row up to that point. 2 of them were over 40 yards.
Mm-hmm. Hawks end up taking this game.
The moment just got too big for him. As much as I can't stand Booger McFarlane, he was right with his take on that. That, the moment got too big for him, and he just tried too hard.
I don't know why everyone doesn't like Booger. I find him hilarious.
Everyone hates him, and I don't think he's getting renewed.
I've really enjoyed him, but I thought he was funny. But you're right. Hawks end up taking the game 27-24. First loss of the season for the Niners. Fred Warner played great. 2 sacks. Robbie Gould injured. McLaughlin in. And there we are.
Kickers matter. As much as people want to disregard that position, it matters.
It really does. Raymond, let's move on to Week 11. Vegas. So here we go. Tough loss. Now we're back home playing the Cardinals. Vegas spread had us at favorites SF minus 11. I call this game, shut the hell up, Arizona. Break this game down for us, Ray.
Well, the thing that stood out to me was injuries. Injuries. And 3 pieces were missing that stood out to me. No Matt Breida, no Ronald Blair, and no George Kittle. So you have 2 big offensive weapons that are not present in this game. And you have a pivotal rotational piece from the defensive line also not present in this game. So those things, and those are important because this team plays so well together that every piece matters defensively and offensively, and you can certainly feel the difference when one of those pieces isn't there, especially a piece as peacocky as George Kittle, not only with his personality and his enthusiasm on the field, but his ability to just play out of his mind every single game. And that was missing. Although Ross Dwelley filled in very nicely for him, I must say. He played great, and he got 2 scores in this game, which was pretty awesome. But and Jeff Fulton Jr. actually got the call up. Normally the return man, he was doing returns but he was also running the ball here because we needed him to get in there and run the ball because we were missing our pieces. Tevin Coleman's complimentary piece was not present. And Raheem Mostert, of course, was there too. So, I just love having a stable of running backs is so good, especially the type of running backs that we have. And all 4 of those pieces will be coming back this upcoming season, so that's exciting. But Jeff Wilson Jr. really got the game going with a big run to set up the 49ers' first touchdown. However, the touchdown, which was caught by Ross Dwelley initially, got called back for a flag, which was the 7th touchdown called back for the season, which is ridiculous. But anyways, Ross Dwelley ended up getting into the end zone a couple times, like I mentioned, and we ended up building a hefty lead into this game. I thought Kyler Murray played a lot better in this game than he did the first game because they started to do the run-pass option, and the Niners struggle against really good running quarterbacks, and I think Kyler Murray's despite being a rookie, I thought he played really well with his running ability and his decision making. He did not play like a rookie. He played more like a second year, third year player. He played with competence, seemed to understand his role, and didn't make a lot of stupid mistakes. He still made rookie mistakes, but not a lot of the mistakes that I see other rookies make. Like some there's a lot more. Like for example, Carolina's quarterback, who ended up losing his job, and now he's going to be the backup to Teddy Bridgewater. Kyle Allen, who was great in the first 4 games, but then just got rocked by San Francisco and just never really recovered and started making dumb mistakes game in and game out, particularly in the turnover margin area. But this game, this was the defense. I thought the defense played a lot better. They shut down Kenyon Drake this time. So Kenyon Drake did not have the same game that he had last time. Arizona still had 135 rushing yards, but a lot of that is attributed to Kyler Murray's run game because they were now implementing the run-pass option into his game and kind of leaning into that. And the other unique thing, too, is the same way that Jimmy G aired it out in the first game, San Francisco had to air it out in this game, but it wasn't by design this time. It was because Arizona took away the running game. No Matt Breida made a difference here. We only had 34 yards on the ground this entire game. Jimmy G ended up throwing for 424 yards in this game. He had to get crazy. And he only got sacked twice, which is good because he had a lot of protection. So this was pretty amazing. He threw 4 touchdowns. He did throw 2 picks. However, each of those picks could have been caught, in my opinion. If it touches your hands and you allow that ball to get tipped and fly into the defender's fault, I think that is the receiver's fault more so than the quarterback. Even though
I don't know, that should be a stat. Like when there should be interceptions caused by the quarterback and interceptions caused by the receiver. That should be a stat because I would say 50% of the interceptions this year that happened to Jimmy G, not because of Jimmy G. They happened to him. How many times do we see some receiver bobble it off of his fingers and then it lands in someone else's hands? Literally 50% of those interceptions.
Yeah, exactly. And that was just a kid. That's how I feel. I think there should be a stat that separates stats because why are quarterbacks charged with an error that wasn't their error? Because there's even more egregious cases of interceptions that should have been caught, but the receiver made the error, like in baseball. In baseball, the errors are very specific. It's not like it's like the batter gets charged with an error because he hit the ball a certain way and the fielder didn't get it. It's just, anyways, it should be more like baseball in my opinion. But I think, Juice Tech was really involved in the passing game. I loved it. I felt bad for him because he got to the 3-yard line like 3 different times and couldn't get into the end zone. They just kept stopping him. But I'd say that my favorite part of this was when Jeff Wilson Jr. came in for one play, and it was Jeff Wilson Jr. opened up the game with a big return off the kick return, but then he got called in to play as he actually called into a play. I made a mistake, or I misspoke earlier when I said that he was involved in the running game. He wasn't. It was Raheem Mostert. But Jeff Wilson Jr. came in for one play, and it ended up being the game-winning touchdown because this game went toe-to-toe. Arizona played a lot better the second time around, but in the end, it really came down to one play and Jimmy G doing Jimmy G magic things, and it was a 25-yard pass from Jimmy to Jeff Wilson for the game-winning score, which put us up 30-26. And then, to add insult to injury, on the ensuing drive, the Arizona Cardinals tried to do like a flea flicker play, which ironically we ended up trying to do in the Falcons game and ended up succumbing to the same results, where they tried to do a lateral pass and then the ball got scrambled around and DJ Reed ended up getting it and walking into the end zone to bump the score up from 30 to 36 to 26. So even though it looks like we kind of had a decisive win, that last score was kind of a garbage time touchdown where Arizona was really just desperately trying to, make a Hail Mary play, and it didn't work. And that same bug came back to bite us in the Atlanta game, which we'll obviously get to. But a win is a win.
A win is a win. Thank you. That was that end was actually sweet. All right. So here we go, Raymond. These next 3 weeks were the toughest 3 weeks any team in NFL history has ever gone through. And let me specify that just a little bit further. The reason for that is because no team has ever had to go against 3 teams in a row with a winning percentage of over 800 or more this late into the season. And this run was being touted as the gauntlet. I'm not sure who coined the phrase. I don't know who the first person was, but this became known as the gauntlet or the gauntlet run. Everyone kept saying they're going to have to go through that gauntlet weeks 12 through 14, and it just became known as the gauntlet. Now, Raymond, I looked this up. The definition of gauntlet, because I was like, what is the true definition of gauntlet? And it means to go through an intimidating or dangerous crowd or experience in order to reach a goal. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, exactly what happened.
And then the second Yeah, where it comes from is a mid-17th century English and Swedish tradition where a military punishment that you could receive is you'd have to run between two rows of men who were hitting you with sticks.
Jeez.
And that was called the gauntlet. I know. That's rough. So I call this game The Gauntlet Begins. The Vegas spread of this had San Francisco -3. Green Bay Packers coming into town. They were 8-2. Niners were 9-1 during this game, or 10-1. We're 10-1 this game. I think we're 9-1.
They were 9-1.
9-1. This team, the first team in the Gauntlet run, the Gauntlet, was of course the Packers, a team whose number we have had all decade. And if you've been listening to a lot of the recaps we've done in the past 3 weeks, this team has come up a lot. How much we have kicked their ass. When we have had a record of over 500, they have been unable to beat us, and that has been very unpleasant for Mr. Number 12, who famously said in the draft that the 49ers would regret the day we didn't sign him. And he has never been able to beat us. He's never been able to beat a 49er team over 500 in his career. So let's begin, Raymond. First quarter, Green Bay gets the ball on the opening drive, but it doesn't last long. Fred Warner with the strip sack. Bosa recovers, 1st and goal. Once again, our main man, Fred Warner.
Why he didn't make the Pro Bowl is beyond me. I would have to look at the other middle linebackers, but Fred Warner should have easily been there.
He was a beast. Tevin Coleman scores on the next play, a 2-yard run, and literally Green Bay unravels from here. This is that is about
that one play.
That one play. They unravel from the get. The following drive ends in punts for both teams. Remember, everyone said we were going to go through this gauntlet run 0-3. That is important. That is important to remember. And already, right at the beginning, we see Green Bay folding like an umbrella. Just boom, they're in.
Rodgers' face, he looked defeated. And like after that strip sack, like, oh, this is going to be a long day. Like that kind of facial expression, like, oh man,
yeah,
here it comes. You know, because they knew they did a scouting report. They knew what they were up against. Their coach was a former coach of ours.
Yeah, but it wasn't enough. Niners they're forced to kick a field goal on the following drive. 10-0 San Francisco. Green Bay's defense is playing well. I will give them that. Applying lots of pressure to Jimmy G. Second quarter, Green Bay's offense cannot get anything going. Niners get some mean hits. Jimmy Ward is everywhere. I almost called this the Jimmy Ward game. If it wasn't for the gauntlet, I would have called this one of those Jimmy Ward games again because he is everywhere. Green Bay, they're making some headway. Early on, they're on the Niners' 40, empty backfield. Rodgers drops back for a little dump pass, and the receiver is immediately hit by Jimmy Ward. And I called this play one of those sit down, little boy moments. You remember that play? He goes, hits him, just sit down, little boy. And Green Bay just sits down and goes, this is a man's game. This is a man's game, little boy. All right, 4th and 1 comes up. Rodgers hands off to Aaron Jones, and he is immediately stuffed just shy of a first down. Another huge backbreaking play by the 49ers. They have done this all season. Stop teams when all they needed was a 1-yard gain, and it will continue and will end up saving the season later on, as we already know. Jimmy is getting hit as much as Rodgers, though. He is getting pummeled left and right. But one of my favorite plays of the game, Ray, occurs when Rodgers drops back and airs it out to Jimmy Graham. Jimmy Ward jumps up right on him, tackles him, and pushes the ball out of his hands in the process. Do you remember this one? The drive ends in another punt. He just throws it, and Jimmy Graham has got it. And then Jimmy Ward just jumps on him and just whacks that ball out and then dives him to the ground. That was a badass play by Jimmy Ward. One of my favorites from him for the entire season.
Yeah, totally. I remember that.
Yeah, that was badass. Niners offense comes alive again with 2 back-to-back catches from Kittle on their ensuing drive. The Niners are able to nab another field goal. Now it is 13-0 in favor of San Francisco. The final drive starts off with Mostert and a real strong run, and then the dagger for the first half hits, which we might as well just call that the dagger for the game. Debo explodes for a 42-yard touchdown. Jimmy G to Debo Samuels. Minute 5 left in the half. 20-0 San Francisco. And it only gets worse from here. Third quarter right here. Face mask by Draylon Green midway through the third.
That was the defense was actually playing really well up until the very end of the second quarter, when Deebo Samuel just kind of took the life out of them, like any chance that they thought they would have. And you're right. There's another one coming up where Green Bay gets a breath of life, and then San Francisco goes and stomps on their lungs.
Yes. The face mask by Greenlaw midway through the third helps put the Packers in the red zone for the first time of this game. 2nd and 8. Rodgers throws a quick pass over to Adams, who's immediately tackled at the ankles by Jimmy Ward. Another killer play. Sherman gets called for unnecessary roughness, which gives Green Bay a fresh set of downs. Had this not happened, it probably would have just been 3 points and out. Devontae Adams scores and then catches the 2-point conversion, 23-8. But at this point, little can be done. But, hey, A for effort. Jimmy G answers right back with a huge 61-yard pass to George Kittle, who takes it all the way to the house. All the way. Boom. I love when he does the 3 fingers and he goes down. Niners traveled 75 yards in 2 plays, 57 seconds, 30-8. You might as well wrap this sucker up. The final touchdown for the 49ers would come with 4:58 left in the fourth. Niners traveled 69 yards in 10 plays, eating up 6 minutes and 31 seconds on the clock in the fourth. Jimmy hands the ball off to Mostert, and he runs up the middle and scores their final touchdown of the game. Green Bay only scored 1 time in the third. Rodgers is held to 104 yards, passing the lowest of his entire career. His whole career. He's never done that poorly. Jimmy is errorless. Fred Warner all over the place on the day with 11 tackles. 49ers win 37-8. And the first of the gauntlet is down.
In a decisive victory. That George Kittle play, too, the first pass of that series was incomplete to Kendrick Bourne. So, really, it was one play, and that was the 61-yard bomb to George Kittle. And it was a great strike by Jimmy on that one, too.
Killer strike. Killer strike. All right, Raymond, moving on to the middle and easily the most anticipated game of the gauntlet, Week 13 at Baltimore. Vegas spread had Baltimore as the rare favorite, -5.5. I call this game the Super Bowl preview. That wasn't. This was the biggest game of the year. The number 1 NFC team versus the number 1 AFC team. Not only was it a Super Bowl matchup preview, people were saying it might be the rematch of the 2012 Super Bowl. Everyone was already pegging that these two teams were going to meet each other again after facing each other 8 years ago in the Super Bowl. Midway through the gauntlet, this was set to be one of the biggest battles of the year, and then it started raining. Raymond, break this game down for the people.
Well, just like we do during the regular season, the injuries were a factor here, I believe. I think had the injuries been a little bit different, I think the outcome of this game would have been different, which I think says more about our team and less about the Ravens, considering that we only lost by a mere field goal. However, once again, no Matt Breida, no Joe Staley, and no Dee Ford, in addition to Quan Alexander. So now you're missing 2 key pieces on 2 levels of the defense, and you're missing 2 key pieces on 2 levels of the offense. That was a big one to me.
Mm-hmm.
And this was more a defensive game because the elements were involved. There was lots of rain, albeit, similar to the Washington game, albeit to a lesser degree. The Niners were still able to pass and run more so than they did in the Washington game, which that game plan just went completely out the window for both teams, and they just defaulted to the running game because that's all you can really do when the elements are that strong. But I thought that probably the best part of this game was the 4th and 2 call in the opening quarter. So the Niners' first possession, because the Ravens elected to kick off first so that they would get the ball back in the second half. And then on a 4th and 2, Kyle Shanahan draws up an intentional bomb to Deebo Samuel, which is a 33-yard bomb. There was some aggressive play calling that I noticed throughout the season that became really conservative in the Super Bowl. And That's the same thing that Andy Reid used to do, which cost him a Super Bowl and many other playoff losses. And Kyle Shanahan's going to have to learn to walk that balance a little bit better than he did. Even though we had the lead going into the fourth quarter, there's some things that he could have done differently to build on that lead had he been a little bit more gutsy and less conservative. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. But back to the main game. And this was the Lamar Jackson game. I thought Lamar Jackson had a pretty good game for the most part. He, of course, was terrific on the ground. Both of these teams ran the ball amazing. San Francisco was actually more efficient. We had 29 carries, 29 rushes for 174 yards and 1 touchdown. Baltimore had 38 carries for 178 yards and 1 touchdown. Most of that really coming from Lamar Jackson, who I think amassed 101 yards.
105.
105 yards. Just because Mark Ingram...
Oh, no, you're right. I'm sorry, 101. Sorry, 101 rushing yards, 105 passing yards.
Yeah. He was. I mean, he's pretty even with it. I mean, his rushing 100 rushing yards is like a 300-yard passing day for a quarterback, the equivalent. So Lamar Jackson's passing game was just he only passed when he needed to. 23 attempts for 23 yards. Jimmy was similar, although he amassed more yardage and had a better rating, but. Again, this really came down to, I thought the run-pass option kind of gassed the Niners towards the end, and it's annoying to watch because I already know the outcome of the game, and so I'm reliving this torturous past where it's I gotta get through this because we're going to talk about it on the podcast, but I don't want to talk about it.
This is my job. This is what we do. This is a gold dive.
Yeah,
well, we don't normally do gold dives on games we lose either, so this is kind of a foreign territory for us.
I know, we don't. But, I mean, the 4th and 2 bomb to Deebo Samuel in the first quarter was an amazing play and a gutsy call by Kyle Shanahan. But, Baltimore answered right back with Jackson hitting Mark Andrews over the middle to tie the game at 7-7. And Andrews... If some of you guys may or may not remember, but Mark Andrews actually mocked Nick Bosa because I believe they went to the same college, and he did the flag taunt that Nick Bosa had done to what's his name, the Cleveland Browns quarterback, Baker Mayfield.
Yes, Baker Mayfield.
And so even though I was like, it's kind of whatever, but that was a kind of whatever taunt.
But it shows how important this game was to both teams. They each team knew at that moment. I realized Baltimore is as conscious as the Niners are about the gravity of what this is. This was mano a mano. This is okay, we're probably gonna have to face each other in the Super Bowl. So what's up? What's up? What you guys got? You know what I mean? We're gonna go for your throat. You better come for ours. And I thought at that moment I was like, yeah, Baltimore. Everyone understands exactly what the subtext of this game is.
Yeah, exactly. And it was unfortunate. So the teams had a couple of back and forths after that. And then Jimmy fumbled the ball. He got strip sacked by Chuck Clark. And then Baltimore got the ball and scored again. And then they were up 14-7 at that point. It was, kind of annoying. But then the Niners answered right back. And Raheem Mostert ended up getting I'm sorry. The strip sack was Baltimore's first score. So that's 7 points off turnovers. That's a key thing to keep in mind. And then after that, it was the Niners punted the ball back to Baltimore, and then Baltimore marched down. Took a lot of time off the clock. They actually put some really good, because they run the ball so much, they take up a lot of time off the clock, and Lamar Jackson ended up scoring a 1-yard touchdown. Once again, the pass option where they fake to Mark Ingram, and then Lamar Jackson just goes into the end zone untouched. He fooled them on so many different plays with the fake handoff, and then he keeps it. And every now and then he would fake the keeper, and Mark Ingram would get it, and then Mark Ingram would get stuffed because your instinct for the most part is to go for the running back, because rarely do there's only a few quarterbacks that run the ball as effectively as Lamar Jackson. And
he's
to be
so
honest,
good at hiding the ball. He's
Yeah.
like, how many times do you see even the cameramen don't know where he's hiding the ball? And literally because what he does, I've noticed this, that when he does that handoff, he will put it in the running back's chest and let him move for like 2 or 3 steps and then pull it back out. And not a lot of other guys hand off that fake that well. Like that's why teams bite so hard, because he'll put it in their chest and just let them move with it. He'll let them move with it, and then he'll slip it out right from behind them and then go. And he does that a lot. And did you notice that Nick Bosa, he bit on that fake over and over and over again, like the whole game?
He bit on it. Eric Armstead bit on it. I mean, all of our guys bit on it. But at the same time, Raheem Mostert was starting to show the amazing flashes. He had shown several up to this point, but then he had a big flash where he had a 40-yard touchdown run where for some reason Baltimore just did not account for him, and he just ran through everybody. And I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, that was a good one. And you're starting to see Mostert move into the lead back position that he would get into. The thing is that we talked about this before. All of our running backs are great, but none of them are really capable. Some of them at this point in their careers are really capable of carrying a full season's load. So you'll see stretches of weeks where like Tevin Coleman's the dude, and then Matt Breida's the dude, and now Raheem Mostert's the dude. And that's one of the great parts about having this running back by committee, is that when these guys are banged up and not really capable of carrying the load, then the new guy steps in and he's the guy. It makes for...
And the rotation keeps everyone fresh, too.
Mm-hmm. It keeps for very frustrating fantasy, but excellent for real football, which is what I care way more about.
Yes, absolutely. And then this game just kind of slipped away from the Niners really late in the game. It was neck and neck up to that point, but up until the very end is really when the game started to get away from it, because it just became about field goals. The Raheem Mostert touchdown was the last touchdown of the game. It was, I think, what was it? It was 14-14, and that was 9 minutes and 22 seconds left in the second quarter. And then the Ravens would score another field goal and go up 17-14 at the half. And then there was only 2 more field goals scored in the game. The Niners put up a Robbie Gould field goal, a 32-yarder in the third quarter to go up to tie the game 17-17. And then the infamous play where the Ravens got the ball back, and then the Niners were so gassed at that point. And that was where the Niners went for it on 4th and 1. That was the big. It was a turnover on downs. They tried to go over the middle for George Kittle, but Chris Womley had good coverage on George Kittle, and it just ended up going for an incomplete pass. And then after that, it was, run. Short passes, a few short passes, and then a bunch of runs by Baltimore. And they put themselves in position to kick a 49-yard field goal, which is a chip shot for Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker's one of the best kickers in the game. He had a Pro Bowl season this past year, and he was great. And they waited a couple seconds for that to happen, and let the game clock expire while the ball went through the uprights, which is something that we would do in the very next game to redeem ourselves from this very tough loss. It wasn't an embarrassing loss. I thought both these teams played really well, but I thought that we were missing some key pieces on offense and defense that gave Baltimore a slight edge that ended up paying dividends as far as, the win and loss column are concerned.
Yeah, this game really pissed me off. But yeah, definitely, you could hold your head high and be confident that we didn't look like no bitches out there. All right, Raymond. Here it goes. Week 14 and the final game of the official gauntlet. But as I said at the earlier in this Gold Dive, the gauntlet really begins and ends with Seattle, but the main event was these 3 games. And the final game, what a game for the ages. Already, even at the end of it, people were calling it the best game played of the season. And I would put it up there with Rams Chiefs of last year as just one of those classics that how can you just forget? It was such an incredible game. And this, of course, is Week 14 at New Orleans. New Orleans was favored, Raymond. The Vegas spread had them -3. And I just love that the final game was probably the biggest, the baddest, and had the most on the line for the Niners. This is Shanahan versus Peyton, Jimmy G versus Drew Brees, Niners and Saints in a classic matchup that dates all the way back to the Saints' time in the NFC West. You know, these teams used to be rivals. These two teams have taken part in some of the biggest games of the decade. And, of course, I'm referring to 2011's The Catch 3, which was on my top 11 list from the best games of the Bay Area. This was my number 2 as the best game played in the last 10 years. And this is on many analysts' lists as the best playoff game of the decade. And here we are facing the Saints again, once again having to go through them in order to maintain NFC supremacy. Winner take all, the road to the Super Bowl possibly is happening right here. I call this game, Raymond, the Gauntlet Revealed. Or, a.k.a., when you come at the king, you best not miss.
or as you could probably already anticipate, when you come at
the king. The reason I call it the Gauntlet Revealed is because famously, after this game, when all was said and done, and many people were saying on Twitter, it was revealed after this 3 games, the NFL realized the Niners didn't go through the gauntlet. The Niners are the gauntlet. That was the best part, and that's why I call this game the Gauntlet Revealed. We were the gauntlet. So, Raymond, let's talk a little bit about I want you to break down some of the injuries because this is important. Drop some of the injuries because we still have some lingering injuries from the game before, and then I'll go through a breakdown of the game. But tell the people who was out for this game.
So this is where I think the injuries really start to hurt us. So there was Jaquiski Tartt got injured in the previous game. That's a big piece, a really pivotal piece, very complimentary to Jimmy Ward, so he's gone. You have Quan Alexander, who's been gone. That's been hurting us all year. And then Staley and Breda return, so that was the good news on offense. And then D. Ford left in the second quarter because he had that nagging hamstring injury that was kind of bugging him off and on all year. And so he left. So the defense now officially has 3 pieces from each level, first, second, and third level, all missing in this game, which I think was a heavy contributor to the fact that this game ended up being a shootout. That's my opinion. That's what I believe, because there's a big difference between when those 3 players are there. Every player mattered because this defense played so well together throughout the entire season that there was just a big difference when you were missing a starter. But missing 3 starters at 3 different positions, I think that just took a big toll on the Niners' ability to be effective on defense the way they had been the previous, 10 games up to that point, or 12 games, excuse me. And that was a big deal. And that played out in this game.
Absolutely. So, Raymond,
Kittle was back too.
That was huge. But I thought Ross Dwelley did a good job in his absence.
He did.
I really did. I thought he did a good job. Okay, so let's begin, Raymond, because this was quite the game. First quarter, Raymond, New Orleans Saints, they come out swinging. Jared Cook catches a 38-yard pass from Drew Brees and immediately puts 7 on the board. But Jimmy comes out slinging on his first possession. He goes 4 of 5 and hits a 6-yard touchdown to Kendrick Bourne. Niners tie up the game 7-7. But boom, again, the Saints answer back. Jared Cook again, this time a 26-yard pass from Drew Brees, and the 2-point conversion fails, but still they're in the lead 13-7. Second quarter opens, and the Niners answer back immediately. Jimmy throws a bomb to Emmanuel Sanders, 75 yards, touchdown pass, 1 play, boom. Niners are right back in it. The Saints score again. They score again on a Drew Brees quarterback sneak and move up move up 27-14, but the Niners answer back with a flea flicker. Emmanuel Sanders to Mostert for a 35-yard touchdown. Niners are now within one possession, 27-21.
That was a great play.
That was a great play. Niners are
and Sanders almost got sacked on that play too.
He did. He got really close. It was very, very close, and it was just a crazy trick play. I love this. Like, flea flickers, they're really hit or miss, but they really hit on this one.
Yeah, they totally did.
Absolutely. Niners take the lead at the end of the half when Jimmy G hands off the ball to Raheem Mostert. Mostert takes it up the middle for a chef's kiss touchdown. That's right. I call that one a chef's kiss touchdown. That's what that was. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Niners take the lead. The game is very close, 28-27. So now, here we are. Third quarter begins. Okay, Niners get the ball to start the third. The drive ends with another one of Jimmy G's classic tipped balls. It goes off of Manny Sanders' hands and then is intercepted by the Saints. But the Niners D comes on hard and forces New Orleans to kick a field goal, 30-28 in favor of New Orleans.
That was one of those throws where could have easily been caught. I understand it was a little behind, but that could have resulted in a reception. I put that one on the receiver.
Absolutely. Saints following drive. The Niners cause the second turnover of the game. DJ Jones pops the ball out of Kamara's hands. Kamara's going for the run. DJ Jones with the tackle. He knocks the ball out. This was a badass, super clutch play. Kamara does not fumble very often. That was a really good play. And once again, DJ Jones, when he's there, he makes his presence known. Killer clutch play by DJ Jones. Niners in New Orleans territory. Jimmy G hits Kittle with a beautiful outside slant. 35-30 in favor of San Francisco. The Saints will kick a field goal on their following drive to make it 35-33. Niners still in charge. Bosa comes up big on the following Saints drive, applying lots of pressure on Breeze. He kills the drive on third down, blocking a dump-off pass to Kamara. Once again, Bosa clutch. His ability to get his hands on that ball when it's being thrown in the backfield is pretty nuts. He does that a lot. He's really good at that.
Yeah, he is. He did that. He's very consistent about that all year long.
So this is where they really, I think the Saints really shot themselves in the foot. So Bosa blocks that dump-off pass, right, from Kamara. The Saints go for a fake punt. So they punt the ball. Taysom Hill is he's the receiving the ball. Instead of setting it up, he gets up and he goes for this huge bomb. But the Niners are all over this. They're all over it. Who was? Do you remember who the receiver was? The Niners they literally just pass interference. They jump on him, they push him, they throw him right out of bounds. And the Saints want there to be called. They want a pass interference to be called, but they can't call pass interference because there's no pass interference on punts or fake punts. Which to me, I wrote down, what the fuck? That's the weirdest rule ever. But I don't fully understand. Do you have any insight, Raymond, as to why when you go from a fake punt to a pass, why you can perform pass interference on special teams on these plays? Because I have no idea.
I think it's a fair call because the defender doesn't know it's a fake punt. So he's going for the block, which on any other regular passing play would be pass interference. You can't put your hands on anybody past 5 yards. So the defender, unbeknownst to him, which was Emmanuel Mosley, by the way, he's going for the block. He's blocking the receiver downfield the way he's supposed to do on that assignment. And if that was the case, then people would do fake punts all the time because they know they would just get the easy pass interference call and get a first down. So I think it's a totally fair rule.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? When you think about it.
Yeah, that's a good call.
The defender doesn't know.
Yeah, that's a good call. Good. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. So this sets us up. We're now deep into the fourth quarter. And the 49ers on the following drive end up going 14 plays, 55 yards, eat up about 6 minutes and 57 seconds, and it ends with Jimmy G and a 6-yard pass to Kendrick Bourne to put us in charge, 42-33. And just when you think the coast is clear, Raymond, just when you think we're safe, nope. Drew Brees, 21-yard pass to Michael Thomas. Boom. They're right back in it. Touchdown again. 40-40. Niners still in charge. Now, here is where it gets super tight. Niners hit a field goal. That puts us up 45-40. Witherspoon almost kills the next Saint drive. Brees throws it right at him. Witherspoon catches it, bobbles it, and drops it. And I thought we had it. I thought the game was over because Brees is like Aaron Rodgers, he's like Tom Brady, Russell Wilson. You give that guy a minute and 50 seconds left and they're only down by one possession, he's going to make you pay. And if it's less, and if they have to score more than 3 points to win, oh, forget about it. These guys are so clutch at this.
And Witherspoon was always just kind of one step behind in the second half of the season, where he just seemed to be one step behind from either making the right play or making the best play.
Mm-hmm. So here we are. What ends up happening is Drew Brees throws an 18-yard pass to Traquan Smith. Traquan Smith gets past Warner. Witherspoon goes for the strip and fails. Smith scores and hits another touchdown. Now the Saints are up 46-45. They go for the 2-point conversion, but miss. Here we go. Niners back with the ball. 4th and 2, 39 seconds left. Probably the biggest play of the year for George Kittle. Jimmy G connects with Kittle on 4th and 2, and he goes for 39 yards. And he would have scored a touchdown. He would have scored a touchdown if it wasn't for a face mask. The defender literally had to grab his face and pull him to the right just to hold on to him. That ends up in a 15-yard penalty, which turns this 39-yard play into a 54-yard play on a do-or-die, all-or-nothing. The Niners, they basically down the ball with 2 seconds left. Robbie Gould kicks a field goal. We do, as you mentioned, to the Saints what the Ravens had done to us, and that's kick a field goal to see the clock go off, and Niners win 48-46.
Yeah, so no chance of a comeback, baby.
No chance of a comeback, baby. Any final thoughts on this game, Raymond? Because this was a masterful game.
The most exciting game of the season by far.
Yeah, we now end the gauntlet 2-1, and as I mentioned, it was now revealed that the Niners didn't go through the gauntlet. They were the gauntlet. If the NFL wasn't put on notice before, they are 100% put on notice now. And just for all you Jimmy G haters, 349 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception. He was 26 of 35. Get like me.
Get on my tip. Where you been? I've been here all day.
That's right. All day on this train. Okay, Raymond, let's move on. Week 15, this is kind of like that Washington game where frustrating, not a whole lot. Vegas had us as the favorites by 10.5, and this was the game that you and I were waiting for. I call this game the Admiral Akbar game. Raymond, tell the people why I call this the Admiral Akbar game.
Because it's a trap.
It was a trap. It was a trap game. So, Raymond, briefly break down this game for us so we can move on to the final 2 games of the season.
Oh, my God. Why I get stuck with these shitty losses is beyond me. It's a 50-50 shot between both of us, whether we get to commentate on these. But alas, it must be done. The show must go on.
Keep it quick. Keep it quick for yourself.
This game was, once again, no Tart, no Quan Alexander, no D Ford, Blair and Jones out for the season. So you're missing 2 key rotational players and 3 key starters. So you're missing 5 defenders on the defensive side of the football. That is huge. Absolutely huge. The offense is there, but the offense is flat. Both these teams came out flat. There was actually no scoring until the second quarter, and that was a Raheem Mostert 2-yard touchdown run. And at that point, it was 10-all. Or actually, it ended up, the halftime ended with a 10-10 tie. And then the 49ers would shut out Atlanta in the third quarter and only came away with a field goal themselves. And then they would punt the ball in their next possession. And then Ross Dwelly would knock the ball out, and Kyle Juszczyk would recover it and get to the 2-yard line. And then Juice would, a.k.a. Juice, would then get a 2-yard touchdown reception from Jimmy. And the Niners would actually build a lead and go up 19-10, 1/3 into the fourth quarter. But then they just started to let Atlanta hang in there. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that they're just missing a lot of defenders and just could not stop Atlanta when they needed to stop them the most. I think, again, had they had the full squad there, Atlanta would have not gotten away with this win. Maybe it would have been a close one just because Atlanta's got good pieces offensively, not so much defensively. And they played much better the second half than they did the first half. They went 1-7 in the first half and then played much better in the second half. They only won, I think they won they were 4-3 or something like that, or 4-2, I forget. But they played a lot better, much more to their potential, their expected potential going into that season. And sure enough, I mean, they went into a no huddle to drive all the way down against a banged up 49ers defense that couldn't hold Atlanta's offense, especially Julio Jones, even though they played him well at times. And Jimmy Ward just came up inches short from getting a magnificent stop. It wouldn't have been the stop that's coming up, but it certainly would have been a memorable stop nonetheless, given the nature of how the play was as a bang-bang play at the goal line. But it literally inches separated us from winning this game versus losing this game. And then eventually we were in the same position that Arizona was in several games back, where we did a desperation Hail Mary lateral play on the ensuing kickoff. We lost the ball, and then Atlanta got it and ran a touchdown in at the very end, and it made the score look more embarrassing than it actually was. It ended up becoming 29-22. God, what a shitty game. So glad we're done with
that. We are. So let's move on, Raymond. Last thing, though, one thing. Do you notice a trend with all of these games leading all the way to, unfortunately, the Super Bowl? A lot of the games we lost, we were in the lead. We had them by the balls, and then it's a late fourth quarter collapse that would haunt us in all these games, and that unfortunately went pretty far for us. Many of these losses, kind of all similar circumstances, an inability for the offense to continue putting points on the board about midway through the fourth.
Yeah, totally. And there was key injuries in all those games. Those injuries matter. Injuries
matter. Absolutely. So here we are, Ray. Let's move on to Week 16. I'm also going to keep this one very short and sweet because I really want to give Raymond the focus for the final game of the year, the closeout of the gauntlet. But let's go to Week 16. We were home for the LA Rams, and Vegas again had us as -6.5 favorites. The Rams come into this game basically fighting for their playoff lives. A loss this week would have eliminated them and their chances of making the playoffs. I call this game, Raymond, oh so sweep.
So sweep. That's a great one.
Oh so sweep. Thank you. This game had a lot of back and forth. Pretty high scoring game. Rams come out early with an early lead, 14-3, and then slowly the Niners would creep up and would end up taking the lead by the end of the second quarter, 24-21. But then Mr. Cooper Kupp of fantasy fame, one of my favorite fantasy players, he who I think is now going to be replaced by Deebo Samuels, but as the new young monster in the NFC West. He catches a huge 22-yard pass from Jared Goff to regain the lead, 28-24. But once again, George Kittle coming through in the clutch and really, really got going in the second half of the season and on 7-yard pass from Jimmy G to retake the lead, 31-28. Greg Zuerlein ties the game with a field goal, 31-31. Robbie Gould closes out the game with a 33-yard field goal after a 9 plays, 60 yards series. Boom, 34-31 in favor of Robbie Gould, and the 49ers win 34-31, and we eliminate the Rams from the playoffs. We sweep the Rams. Bye-bye. See you later. Deuces. Now, Raymond, let's move on. I just want to hit this final game, and I want to give the floor to you. You know, you might have had the stinkers, Ray, but you have what I had in my top 11 as one of the greatest games of the last 10 years. And the final gate of the gauntlet, Vegas spread had us at -3. And Raymond, I find it fitting that in the 100th season of the NFL, the final game of that 100th year, the final game of the season, the final game airing on television would feature the 49ers and their rivals, the Seahawks. This is the greatest NFC rival, the greatest NFL rivalry of the past 10 years. And this game, the winner would take first place and get the quote-unquote easiest road to the Super Bowl. The loser would take 5th place and have to go on to face the 3rd seed in this one. Not only were the chips stacked against us, we had to go into Seattle, a city we had not won in since 2013. And as I mentioned before, if the gauntlet began with Seattle, it is only fitting that it ends here in Seattle. And Raymond, the first game against Seattle I called Ric Flair's Dirty Underwear. This one I call Ric Flair's Golden Spoon.
Because he ate every meal with a golden spoon.
Absolutely. Golden spoon in his mouth. So, Raymond, let us know what happened.
To the promised land. This was as you pointed out, the battle for the West, the battle for the conference, a winner-take-all game. Still no Tart, still no Alexander, still no Ford, and, of course, no Ronald Blair and no DJ Jones. So, pivotal pieces missing. But we're at home, and we have an important game, which means that everyone's enthusiasm and focus is a little amped up. And I thought that was very, very evident in this game, especially early on. The Niners dominated the first half, going up 13-0. Although 13-0 against Russell Wilson is not a healthy lead. And sure enough, the Seahawks would. But by the way, that was a 30-yard rushing touchdown by Deebo Samuel, the one where he does the infamous spin halfway through it and barely stays in bounds on that amazing play. Deebo Samuel just amazing, whether he's running the ball or whether he's catching the ball. I just can't wait to see what he's going to do this season. I think he's easily going to amass 1,000 yards receiving. And if we ran the ball, if he ran the ball as much as our running backs did, he could easily, do a Roger Craig and go for 1,000. I believe he's that good. He ran the ball just as well as he caught the ball. But nevertheless, the Seahawks would answer back in the third quarter after we built a 13-point lead. So that was 2 field goals by Robbie Gould. And in the first one, by the way, it was 47 yards. So Robbie Gould really showing that range on that foot there and that consistency. He would hit from 47 and 30 yards in the first half before the Seahawks would answer with a Tyler Lockett catch and touchdown, 14 yards from Russell Wilson. But then, again, the Niners would respond with their own score. And again, this was just, I felt like this game was equally as tight as the previous game. I thought it was a bit more physical than the last game because the previous matchup because there was more at stake. And I felt that both teams, despite the fact that Seattle was really banged up going into that game, the Niners defensively were really banged up going into that game. I just thought that was they both played well despite the odds and the handicaps going into that game. Both teams played as if, it was all or nothing, which is great. That's what you want to see, especially with this particular matchup. But after the Tyler Lockett touchdown, the Niners would go on their own drive, and it was really only a handful of plays. And it was great. Jimmy threw to Kyle Juszczyk for 49 yards, big chunk play. Raheem Mostert would get a couple carries and would eventually get into the end zone for another score, and we'd go up 19-13. They would try for a 2-point attempt with Kendrick Bourne, but it did fail. I'm surprised they didn't review that play because it looked kind of tight and bang to me. So I'm not sure what happened there.
I thought it also looked bang to me. Like I actually thought, unlike the final play at the end, I thought he broke the plane.
It did look like he could have just barely got in there, and that's all it really takes. So kind of odd that they didn't do that. But then Seattle would go on a really long drive after that and would take up not only the remainder of the third quarter, but also over a third of the fourth quarter with the next drive. And it was just a bunch of different passes, mostly passing plays, a few runs, because Seattle's running game was okay. I thought the young kid, the rookie Homer, played well. For the most part, he averaged 6 yards a carry. But I thought Russell Wilson had the most important runs of the night, because those were the runs that kept plays alive. They were off-script plays, and most of the time you're dealing with less defenders when you have a late off-script running play by the quarterback, because a lot of your secondary is downfield with the receivers. So you're only going to have to deal with for maybe half the first and half the second level defenders, unless, of course, you have really fast, good defenders like we do that can close in on the ball fast. But I thought that Russell Wilson had the more important runs. But again, they gave it to Marshawn Lynch, who they marched all the way down to the goal line. And I thought that they did really good up to this point. But then they got a defensive holding that really set them back. And God, and even up to that play, there was a Russell Wilson pass to Tyler Lockett for 6 yards, and then Kwan Williams tackled Tyler Lockett, and he fumbled. But the ball went out of bounds at about the San Francisco 11, and unfortunately they were obviously retained possession there. But then there was a holding penalty that gave Seattle a fresh set of downs, and on the very 2 plays later, they gave it, or the very next play, they gave it to Marshawn Lynch, who dove in for the touchdown. And Marshawn Lynch was only there because Seattle had lost all 3 of their starting running backs up to that point, and they were just desperate. So they called a retired player and said, hey, do you mind coming over here? You're familiar with the team. You're familiar with the fans. It'll be great for you. It'll be great for us because we need you and we got nobody else. So Marshawn said, okay, cool. I'll bring a bag of Skittles and I'll play. And he, to be honest, he looked bad. He looked like a retired player. He looked like, outside of the leap for the touchdown, and he had like maybe 1 10-yard run or 9-yard run. I can't remember. But he was a shell of himself. And they had no rushing game outside of him, and any play he was involved with as far as rushing was concerned was just a wash. It was horrible. But the Niners would then get the ball back, of course, and Raheem Mostert got 13 yards. Jimmy passed to George Kittle for another 16 yards. Matt Breida got 6 yards on the next run, and then they had a negative. They got stuffed in the next play, but then Jimmy threw a deep pass to Deebo Samuel for 21 yards. That was amazing. Then we took a timeout, and then, of course, Raheem Mostert went up the left side through the guards and got a 13-yard touchdown, and we got an extra point, and that was a big one. That was a big one because that was in the fourth quarter. Only 5 minutes, 50 seconds remaining up to that point. And that score by Raheem Mostert put us up 26-14. So we're like, you're sitting pretty with 2 possessions there. But, of course, Russell Wilson would do Russell Wilson-like things, and then he would get a 14-yard touchdown pass to DK Metcalf. And one thing that stood out to me, and again, just like how Fred Warner stood out to me and Jimmy Ward's play stood out to me, I got a closer look at Witherspoon, who just continued to struggle against winning his coverage battles. He just struggled all the time. And he gave up the first Seattle touchdown. But by the time DK Metcalf came in the fourth quarter, Witherspoon had gotten benched. He got benched right around this time because it was an incomplete for DK Metcalf, which was defended by Ahkello Witherspoon, so he did well on that play. But then he's the one that gave up the DK Metcalf touchdown with 14 yards late in the fourth quarter. And after that, they're like, all right, we've had enough of you. And then he got benched. I feel bad because I like Ahkello Witherspoon. They drafted him, so they obviously believe in him. But after that, Emmanuel Moseley came in and he covered him for the remainder of the game. And Emmanuel Moseley didn't exactly he did okay. I thought he did better overall because the Niners got the ball back, but it was a 3-and-out, and we gave the ball right back. And then Russell Wilson came down. Emmanuel Moseley actually gave up a 10-yard pass to DK Metcalf. And then DK Metcalf gave up a 24-yard pass, or Emmanuel Mosley gave up a 24-yard pass to DK Metcalf, and it was DK Metcalf was all over the last drive. It was crazy, and he caught one for 10 yards, caught one for 24 yards, and then they tried to do a short pass, but then Emmanuel Mosley got the best of him. So he got, and it was 2 incomplete passes too, which was a combination of pressure and Emmanuel Mosley. So Emmanuel Mosley did better. He didn't give up the big play outside of the 24-yard bomb, but then they just kept at it. Seattle kept at it, and then they go to the goal line, and this was the biggest moment of the game, and the tension was high. Everything was coming down to the line. Less than a minute left on the clock, and then this was the weirdest sequence from the Seattle perspective. So Seattle gets to the goal line. It's 1st and goal. They spike the ball to stop the clock on the first play. The second down, they take super long to get the play called and line up and get a delay of game flag. They lose 5 yards. So now they're back. And they get back to, now it's 2nd and 5 on the San Francisco 5 versus 2nd and 1 on the San Francisco 1. They throw an incomplete pass to Tyler Lockett, which is defended by Marcel Harris. Then on 3rd and 5, Russell Wilson throws again, intended for Jacob Hollister. That's an incomplete pass. Then on 4th and 5, on the San Francisco 5, they throw again a short pass over the middle to Jacob Hollister. This time he catches it. He runs 4 yards. He gets 4 yards, and then Dre Greenlaw comes in. The spirit of San Francisco of old comes in wearing number 57, just like, I forget the name. Who was the name of the guy that did the first stop? Dan Buns.
Yes.
Dan Buns comes in. The spirit of Dan Buns, who's still alive, but the spirit of Dan Buns was alive. Was also inside of Dre Greenlaw, and he makes what is known now as the stop 2 on the goal line. So succeeding in what Jimmy Ward failed to do, and his failure was within inches, really. I mean, you have Julio Jones against Jimmy Ward. There's a significant size difference there that obviously favors Julio Jones. But in this case, you have Jacob Hollister against Dre Greenlaw, and Dre Greenlaw has the matchup size advantage here. And sure enough, it paid dividends for getting the stop 2. And of course, the clock then, Jimmy, they get the ball back on the 1 yard line, and they do a sneak up the middle, Jimmy Garoppolo for 2 yards. Time expires. Niners win the West. They win the first seed in the division and get a much-needed break bye heading into the playoffs. And I couldn't think of a better way, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, a better way to end the regular season than with the climactic, dramatic finish to this victory over the Seattle Seahawks.
It was such an epic victory. It comes down to the final play in the final seconds. Once again, Seattle, all they have to do is cross the 1 yard line to get what they want. And once again, it is taken from them, most famously by the New England Patriots in the 2014 Super Bowl. And then, or 2013 Super Bowl. I always get the years mixed up on these because it always crosses over 2 years. And then now, second most famously, by the 49ers. The gauntlet closes. The 49ers have assumed complete control of the entire NFC, and now they were the 1 seed.
Yes, with a team with a fake ass mascot and a fake ass 12th player.
Yeah, fake ass 12th player. You know what, Raymond? I've said this many times. I'll say it many more times. You know what I appreciate about the city of San Francisco and the San Francisco 49ers?
What? What is it?
That my professional football team doesn't need the crowd to win them games. They have 11 players on the field, and that's all they need, and I'm proud of that. I'm proud that I don't have to cheer so loud that it confuses the other team, because my team doesn't need my help because they're professional football players. They're professional men.
That's right.
They don't need people cheering to help them. That's what I love. I'm proud of it. You should never be proud of that, Seattle. They didn't even invent that, by the way. They stole that and then they almost got sued for it, which is a whole nother thing. But Raymond, final thoughts on this game before we wrap up. Obviously, we will be going into the playoffs on our final Gold Dive. We'll be covering the playoffs in depth. And we'll also be going over our Gold Dive awards. We always give awards out for these Gold Dives. We'll be doing them for this team. But any final thoughts for what was a great season? Great season. I have no complaints. The season from weeks 1 through 17, what a roller coaster. What an incredible journey. It was amazing. It was an amazing season.
Yeah, and when you break down the 3 losses, all 3 of those losses could have been won. They all came down to one possession. And really, a field goal. Each one of those could have been won with a field goal. Or you take away one mistake, or 1 or 2 players are healthy that game. Niners never got blew out the entire game, the entire season. They never got blown out. It was always close game, down to the wire. I mean, garbage time points, sure, but the Niners were never beaten to a pulp by another team. They really just had some unfortunate, less than a handful of unfortunate events that led to some losses. They could have easily won all 3 of those games and swept the season.
Absolutely, but I'm glad they didn't because that's so trap gamey. You know what I mean?
It is. I mean, it can go either way. It's 50-50. The odds seem a little bit steeper of winning every single game, but anything can happen any given Sunday.
Absolutely. Overall, a tremendous season. I'm really glad we did that. I thought that was really good. That was really good. So good job, Raymond. And so what say you, GoldCast Nation? Let us know. Go down to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know what you think about the second half of our Gold Dive, weeks 9 through 17, where the real drama was. Let us know in the comments. Tell us what you think. Tell us what your favorite moments are. What did you like most? What was your favorite game? Let us know in the comments. youtube.com/thegoldcast. We will be back next week with the final edition of this. We'll also be back with a NFL draft review episode. That's coming up. And then we're also next week, they won't be all coming out next week, but we are recording more Gold Dive episodes, this time focusing on the Warriors and the Giants. With our boy, our third co-host, Candlestick Will. He will be back. We are doing more Gold Dive episodes, but now, after this, we're turning the focus on the Warriors and the Giants. So concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis I, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.
This is the GoldCast.